Hello, everyone. My name is Dana Cooper. I'm the Executive Director of ISBER, and I will be today's webinar host. Welcome to today's webinar titled A Sneak Peek at the Unique Program of the ISBER 2024 Annual Meeting, Dreaming Beyond Barriers, the Future of Biobanking, presented by the co-chairs of ISBER 2024 Annual Meeting, Cassandra Griffin, Gregory Grossman, and Amanda Moores. Before we get started, I would like to go over the format for this webinar. Cassandra, Gregory, and Amanda will give a 45-minute presentation. After the presentation, a question and answer period will take place. All lines will be placed on mute during the presentation. You may post written questions during the webinar by using the question box in your Zoom panel. After the presentation, all questions will be answered. I am happy now to introduce our speakers. Cassandra Griffin manages NSW Regional Biospecimen and Research Services at the University of Newcastle, Australia. With a background in oncology clinical trials and international medical communications, Cassandra has a keen interest in sustainability and biobanking partnerships. Cassandra is especially interested in post-mortem brain biobanking, particularly the psychosocial impact for donors and their loved ones. Cassandra is the past president of the Australasian Biospecimen Network Association, ABNA, and an active member of ISBER, having previously served on the 2023 Annual Meeting Planning Committee. She is delighted to contribute to the 2024 meeting with such a wonderful team. Dr. Gregory Grossman has over 18 years of clinical and research experience and serves as the Chief Scientific Officer of Advancing Site Network and the Executive Director of the Precision Ocular Biobank. He received his PhD from Kent State University and completed a fellowship in ophthalmology at the Cleveland Clinic, and he holds board certifications in eye banking, clinical trials, and medical affairs. He is a member of the ISBER Product Development and Webinar Planning Task Forces and co-chair of the ISBER 2024 Annual Meeting and an associate editor of the 5th edition of ISBER Best Practices. And finally, Amanda Moores is the program coordinator for the U.S. Department of Commerce National Institute of Standards and Technologies, NIST Biorepository. She collaborates with federal, state, and nonprofit organizations to implement standardized collection protocols and procedures for achieving diverse taxonomic samples for real-time and retrospective analysis. Amanda has been active in ISBER for many years, serving as a co-chair for the 2024 ISBER Annual Meeting, co-chair for the 2021 ISBER Annual Meeting, the virtual one, the ISBER Organizing Advisory Committee, ISBER Scientific Program Committee, contributor to the ISBER Best Practices 5th edition, and the ISBER Education and Training Committee. Welcome, Cassandra, Gregory, and Amanda.
Thank you very much. We're so happy to be here. Both Cass and I do not have anything to disclose. So next slide, please. So welcome all to this webinar, and welcome to Australia. Next. So this webinar today is focused on ISBER's upcoming annual meeting in April in Melbourne, which is entitled Dreaming Beyond Barriers, the Future of Biobanking. And today, we're going to show you the amazing opportunities to learn, to connect, and explore at this meeting. And we can only give you just a brief glimpse today of all the amazing things that are occurring at the meeting. But we will have time, as Dana said at the end, for questions, and there's more information on the website. Next, please. So on behalf of the co-chairs, Cassandra Griffin, Amanda Moores, and myself, we welcome you to this webinar and to the meeting. And due to a family loss, sadly, Amanda can't join us today, but our hearts go out to her, and she's looking forward to meeting y'all in Australia, as she would say. Next, please. So it's quite daunting to put on one of these global events. And this could not be accomplished without the hard and dedicated work of the planning task force and the local engagement task force. And these people worked tirelessly, had way too many meetings with us, but they really built a robust meeting, and you'll see that. We also want to acknowledge the ISBER office, specifically Dana, Kim, and Alitze. And we also need to acknowledge the support of the ISBER board, the corporate sponsors, and our exhibitors. Next, please. But most importantly, it's about you. You are what's going to make this meeting happen. So our delegates are really the heart of our meetings, and you coming and participating is when we're going to have the magic. Next, please.
And I think that's my cue to jump in. So hello, everyone. We're really absolutely delighted to hear that ISBER is coming back to the IPR. The last time we had an annual meeting in the IPR was Shanghai in 2019. This is a jam-packed meeting. It's a little bit different to some of the meetings that we have brought you in the past, but to celebrate the uniqueness of the IPR region and our amazing colleagues throughout the region, we have presentations from Malaysia, New Zealand, India, Vietnam, Japan, and of course, Australia. So 70% of our symposium speakers are from the region, and we're hoping to bring you some topics and some areas of biobanking that are a little bit different, and perhaps some concepts that we haven't addressed in previous meetings. Next slide, please. So I appreciate that at last year's meeting, for anybody who attended in person and saw the global session, we may have struck some fear into some of you with talk of some of the less than welcoming creatures that inhabit Australia. But I just want to say that some of that can be fake news. It's not quite as scary and as terrifying as everybody thinks. Not everything is out to kill you. And it's actually an amazing country with incredible biodiversity, full of color and a symphony of sound. Having lived overseas, one of the things that I missed the most was the bird song. And I assure you that you won't have to be on Australian soil for long before you start to appreciate the amazing biodiversity around you and what's welcoming you to our wonderful country. Next slide, please. And for anybody who has an opportunity to travel a little bit while you're here, it really is the adventure of a lifetime. You don't have to travel too far to experience completely different landscapes, be they the amazing white sand beaches, the red dirt of Central Australia, some of the amazing mountain landscapes. And depending on the weather while you're here, we do put on a pretty spectacular light show during storm season. Next slide, please. So to orientate you a little bit, for those who haven't been here or aren't too familiar with Australia, and I'm not sure that I can use my mouse in this setting, but perhaps starting up towards the top right, you can see the Great Barrier Reef. And I know a number of people are keen to visit Cairns or Port Douglas and head out there. We do have some less than welcoming visitors up in Northern Australia in terms of our crocodiles, but I assure you we won't be seeing any of those roaming through Melbourne. Uluru and Central Australia is a truly magical place if anybody has the opportunity to visit, as is the Kimberley on the far left there, far left top corner. Quokkas, many of you will have seen celebrity selfies on Rottnest Island. So this is off Perth in Western Australia. Or if you're after a fine drop, we have some incredible vineyards throughout Australia in the Hunter region in New South Wales, where I'm from, or down in South Australia, which is famous for its winery region. Tasmania is a bit of a foodie central, which is far down south. And then, of course, ISBER is being held in Melbourne, in Victoria, which is south of New South Wales, of course, known for Sydney. And for all of those wondering, yes, Byron Bay, which is where the Hemsworths roam natively. They won't be anywhere near us in Melbourne, but just, again, to orientate you, that's a question we get quite frequently. Next slide. Melbourne is a cultural capital of Australia, and I think most people would describe it in three ways. That's why it's three hallmarks. It's laneways, which are full of murals and art and music and just this cultural melting pot. It's shopping, amazing arcades, the Victoria Market, and it's coffee. Melbourne has the best coffee in Australia, and I'm aware a lot of the Sydney-siders and Brisbane people who are on the call might disagree with me there, but I think it's a pretty safe bet to say that it is our coffee capital. Next slide, please. It's a truly global city. It's driven by research, academia, and industry leaders. It has a rich history. As I say, it's a cultural melting pot in terms of art and museums and theatre, but also truly multicultural food. And there are some amazing eating streets and districts for any of the foodies who are joining us. It also has a rich sporting culture for AFL and tennis. Not being a sporting person myself, but there's something for everybody in Melbourne. It's a remarkable global city. Next slide, please. And you don't have to travel too far out of Melbourne if you're looking for adventure. So the Great Ocean Road is an incredible expanse of coastline in Australia that features some of these amazing rock formations, what you see there on the far left. It's known as the 12 Apostles, which is a little bit misleading due to some of them crumbling. I think we're down to about 9 apostles now, but it is incredible. The Dandenong Ranges, which is stunning and gorgeous and wonderful for hiking and exploring. Or if you head south, you can head down to Phillip Island, which has a penguin migration that occurs each evening. And if you get the opportunity to see this, it's absolutely stunning for the wildlife lovers. They're the cutest little things. They come out of the surf at night and make their way up to where they burrow. And it's sort of just this troop migration, and watching their little personalities as they head up. It's gorgeous. Next slide, please. So Australia boasts one of the oldest cultures on earth with our Indigenous persons, but you're not just visiting one country. The idea of country in Indigenous Australian culture speaks to over 200 nations, and it's the idea that these tribes and these local people are recognised throughout the country, and they would interact and share and collaborate. And we try now to celebrate the diversity of Indigenous cultures throughout Australia, and we'll speak to that a little bit more when we speak about the Welcome to Country, which is how we'll be opening our meeting. But it's important to recognise that as you travel throughout Australia, you are crossing into different country that have unique customs and traditions and ways of life, unique totems and spiritual pathways that are largely connected by similar core precepts for caring for the land and how to interact with the national land. But there is an incredibly rich diversity in Indigenous culture throughout Australia. Next slide, please. And one of those key themes that runs throughout Indigenous culture is the idea of the dreaming or the dream time. The dreaming is the basis for beliefs and law throughout Indigenous culture across country, and it outlines the key principles for life. And the reason why I wanted just to touch on this briefly is that I think just looking at this list here, we can agree that a number of these are reminiscent of our core ideologies as biobankers and biospecimen scientists. So the ideas of stewardship and custodianship over the land and over the native beings that live on the land, the native flora and fauna, sustainable management of resources, and ensuring that the way that we live and the way that we operate in our daily lives is in harmony with the land and in harmony with natural resources. Respect for agency and consent, and indeed you'll hear speakers speak about the interaction with Indigenous persons and gaining consent for biobanking from the natural land here in Australia. The idea that collaboration is at the heart of all that we do in our work and life, and avoidance of waste and maximisation of what is available to us, but ultimately a culture of respect, and that's respect for all living things, not just humankind. Next slide, please. So it's with that idea of dreaming and dream time that we bring to you our meeting theme, and that is to dream beyond barriers and to explore the future of biobanking, to harness all of those concepts that play into the idea of the dreaming and what it means to work in a collaborative and respectful and harmonious way, but also in a more literal sense, to dream the future and to try and envision and build where we want our community and our industry to go in the coming years. Next slide, please. So the way our conference will open, it will start with a welcome to country. So this is a tradition that is held throughout all large gatherings in Australia. For a smaller meeting, an institutional meeting or something like that, we often have an acknowledgement of country. And that's where the presenters or the presenting team will acknowledge the traditional owners of the land. But for something of the scale of ISBER, particularly where we're welcoming international guests to Australian shores, a welcome to country is about inviting local elders to the event to share with you their local culture. Where I am based now, it's the Awabakal people. However, when we're on the Yarra, it will be the Wiradjuri people of the Kulin Nation. And they will come in and likely share some traditional stories, possibly some music. Every welcome to country is different. So it's always a little bit of a surprise depending on the country that you are in. But we're sure that it will be a highlight and hopefully really provide a grounding to what Australia is about and to the culture that you're experiencing. We'll also have introductions and a welcome from our ISBER president, but also from the annual meeting co-chairs. Next slide. And I believe I'm passing back to you, Greg.
You are. Well, Cass, you did an amazing job of sharing the beauty of the land and the culture. And so we're going to do a tour of all the different programs and opportunities we have. And really, excellence in biobanking is a hallmark of ISBER. And we have biobanking science packed program just waiting for you. We'll have symposiums with international speakers. We'll have roundtables, corporate workshops, contributed papers, posters, and many education and training workshops. But key thing about this meeting is that ISBER is also about connection and establishing collaborations. And so this is really an unparalleled opportunity to do networking. And so we're going to highlight some of the program details where you'll have ample opportunity to learn, to connect, to grow, and have fun and celebrate. Next, please. So we are really honored to have our keynote speaker, Professor Andrew Pask of the University of Melbourne. He is an acclaimed speaker, scientist, and advocate of Australia's natural environment. So, talk entitled Bringing Back the Past to Protect the Future is highlighting his work on the de-extinction or the bringing back of the thylacine. So commonly referred to as the Tasmanian wolf or Tasmanian tiger. This was Australia's apex predator. Next, please. So beyond this tiger project, he will also discuss how his biobank collects, processes, and stores samples from endangered Australian wildlife, which is under encroachment of humans and global climate change. And this is really a good lead into our first symposium. Cass, you want to take the next?
Thank you. Next slide, please. So Symposium 1, we are incredibly excited about. You'll notice with all of our symposium this year, we've worked really hard as a program planning task force to ensure there's a strong narrative running throughout the wider meeting, but also within each sessions. And I think this session in particular really illustrates that, looking at the impact of the natural world and biobanking. So the role that biobanking plays in environmental conservation, but then looking at further down from a One Health approach, how conservation and biobanking impacts human health, and largely tying that in at the end by looking at the role that biobanking has on the environment and how we can mitigate the impact that biobanking has on the environment. And what I mean in that sense is the role of microplastics and decarbonisation, and how we can ensure that the work that we're doing to protect the environment isn't inherently harming it. And we have an incredible range of speakers in this session covering Botanic Gardens biobanking, Shellbank, which is a conservation project and anti-poaching effort for turtle species. We have one of the largest venom banks in the world, and our speaker looking at how the collection of venoms can then be used for downstream medical or pest control applications. And then an amazing speaker from South Africa, who'll be looking at biobanking and illegal animal trade, and also some citizen science in there as well. So it's a really well-rounded and diverse session, again, looking at some unique concepts that we hope will have correlations with the work that people are doing in other fields, but just showing how that One Health approach impacts biobanking across the board. Next slide, please.
I'm really excited about this symposium, which really explores the emerging technology in biobanking. So things such like AI, blockchain, and synthetic data, we will be looking at how those will have an impact on our practices, and also how we can navigate those technologies. So we really have a world-class group of experts. We have a lawyer, we have people coming from the AI field, and we're also going to be looking at the deployment of AI and blockchain, showing real-world applications and how they're affecting operations today. We will also have experts considering the ethical risks, the bias, the democratization, and the transparency of this technology. And I think many of you this will be an eye-opening event, but will not be no longer a distant thing that's coming, but it will be in terms that everyone can understand. Next, please.
So in contrast to a session that's focusing on technology and I guess machine, from man to machine, this session is looking at the people in biobanking and the interplay between the systems and the processes that we have in biobanking and the people who operate that. So looking at human factors or human engineering, this session explores the interplay between abilities and behaviors and how these impact processes and biobanking structures. There are speakers looking at innovation and design and strategic approaches to biobanking systems from a holistic perspective, social engineering for awareness and advocacy in biobanking, and how you can mobilize biobanking networks and stakeholder networks to increase visibility and impact of biobanking. But also, in line with what Greg was just speaking about, cultivating trust and working with your communities, with your stakeholders and your colleagues to navigate digital change and to ensure that there's still an appropriate balance and, I guess, well-orchestrated relationship between technology and the people who are operating and implementing the technology within our biobanking systems and workflows. Next slide, please.
Well, that's a great lead in, because this is truly the nexus of human-centered and technologies. And, biobanking has a huge role to play in precision medicine. And we're really going to explore the dynamic interplay of precision medicine and biobanking here. So we're going to have experts showing us patient-directed biobanking in ecology, biobanking as the cornerstone of precision medicine. We're going to have experts speaking on how to best align practices and standards we have to support these precision medicine initiatives. And this really is going to cover from prospecting to direct care. So everyone, if you're not involved, you'll be able to see the gravity of this and also link to downward patient care. Next, please.
And hopefully you can sort of see our connections here in our pathway, because now we're going even further downstream and heading back to basics, looking at DNA and the role that DNA has played and will continue to play in biobanking. This session is exceptionally diverse, and I'm really, really excited about the journey that this session is going to take everybody on. It's looking largely at some of the different mechanisms and collection processes for DNA, but also some of the unique populations that DNA can be collected from. So marginalized populations, but also forensic purposes, so missing persons, and how DNA can be implemented into DNA banks and screening programs. but looking at also marginalized populations in terms of incarcerated persons and how you can operate research programs within quite a volatile and vulnerable population in the prison system. We're then looking at DNA surveillance, both for environmental and human health research. There's an echidna presentation that's happening here that looks at citizen science and the role of citizen science, or echidna CSI. And then models of consent and some of the ethical and legal implications of working with DNA, particularly in the context of COVID and of wastewater screening, and how population-based approaches to DNA collection and analysis can be implemented in a way that is still in alignment with core principles of ethical and legal practice. Next slide, please.
I am really excited about this one. This is our last symposium, and it's the Rising Stars Next Generation of Biobankers. So we're going to be really showcasing our upcoming stars in early biobanks. And these speakers are going to share with you highlights of their milestones and achievements that they've been accomplished. But importantly, they are going to also talk about the challenges and barriers and how they overcame them to establish their systems and biobanks. And we're going to have a really robust panel discussion after this. And I'm very excited that as a follow-up to this, we're going to have a roundtable where you'll be able to meet these rising stars. And this is really an opportunity for us to learn about these up-and-comers, but also honor them and see what the next generation is bringing. Next, please. Okay, this is maybe my favorite. I have a lot of favorites, by the way, are the roundtables. And I wrote at the top, they're informal but powerful. And so that may seem contradictory, but roundtables are a great format. They're informal because you come as you are. You don't have to sign up in advance. There's tables set up with a speaker, and that speaker has a topic or a challenge and that we face in biobanking. And it's a format where everyone can contribute, ask questions, where ideas can grow and some consolidation of those. So it's really important in our society to have these. And again, we can only list a few of these things, but some topics of interest are the new ISBER mentoring program, the review of the biobanking ISO, benefits in biobanking accreditation, which many of our members have taken that path, and ethical principles for international biospecimen and data sharing. So come as you are, be prepared to just learn. You could listen. These are an exceptional format to connect with people as well. Next, please.
That's a throwback to last year's theme there, Greg. Come as you are. See, it's all it all interconnects. So complementing our roundtables, we have our workshops, which are really a collaborative education process. So these are slightly more structured than the roundtables where everybody sort of comes and contributes, but they're still incredibly engaging, incredibly collaborative. And these are training workshops which will provide delegates an opportunity to upskill while also sharing their ideas and discussing challenges. But I think the key here is that it's in a peer-to-peer environment. Again, we can't list all of these, but just to provide a snapshot. So publication, which I think for a number of biobankers who are often short on time, but also not necessarily coming from an academic background sometimes. So overcoming barriers to publication and how to carve out a niche within the publication field for biobanking work, quality harmonization in biobanking, assessing biobanking footprints, which looking at some of the submitted work this year, but also just from general conversations in terms of decarbonization and some of these really hot topics that are really, prominent in biobanking conversations at the moment, and innovations in biobanking education and how we can continue to upskill and educate and promote our field. Next slide, please. We also have a huge number of contributed abstracts and posters this year, so you will not be short on opportunities to explore and network and collaborate on some of the emerging work that's being presented by our members. And this runs throughout the program. So our poster hall is open throughout the event, and there are dedicated networking sessions for you to go and peruse the posters and to discuss things with the presenters. Tuesday evening is the main session that's been earmarked within the calendar, within the program calendar, to go and meet with these presenters. But we encourage all poster presenters to, hang around and be there to engage with your colleagues and discuss the work that you're presenting. We also have a number of contributed paper sessions that are running concurrently. So on the Wednesday, we have our innovative technology oral presentations. Some of these are trade presentations, but not all of them. And again, as the title would suggest, these are on innovative technologies. But we then have 2 sets of concurrent contributed paper sessions, one on the Wednesday and one on the Friday. In past years, these have been broken down by topic or by submitted category. This year, we're taking a slightly different approach in that there's a little bit of everything in these sessions. And we've done that to encourage cross-disciplinary working, but also to sort of nudge people to experience work and to engage with colleagues who might be outside of their biobanking subdiscipline, just to really try and encourage that mixing pot and melting pot of ideas to make this as collaborative and exciting and engaging as possible. So we encourage you to get to as many of those as you possibly can. Next slide.
Okay, so probably what many of you have heard about is that we're going to celebrate our 25th anniversary. And we will honor this silver celebration at actually 2 different events. So we're going to have past and present presidents speak at this event. And we're really going to honor the pioneers and all the members that have contributed. So you're going to learn about the history of ISBER, but also learn about our impact today. And you're going to have an opportunity to see a lot of the stars of ISBER, and we're going to have some surprises coming, including video presentation. So this is one not to be missed. And we all want to come together and celebrate as a society. Next, please. Okay, so we've told you about some education and networking opportunities already, but there are a host of others. So we have a presentation on the 5th edition, newly released best practices. There's the ISBER annual general meeting where you can learn more about our society and its strategic path. There's a global partnership session. There's a welcoming ceremony on the networking side, a sponsored networking event, a 5K run, a speed networking event, and there's networking breaks. So we're going to dive a little into some of these to give you a better look. Next, please. So the ISBER best practices, as many of you know, is really our flagship property. And it really, when I encountered ISBER, I encountered the best practices first. And so it's a tool, it's a resource used by people around the world. And so this presentation, this plenary lecture, from theory to application, is going to really cover the new changes and help you navigate those, but also help you apply those for your sustainability. So we're excited to have members of our editorial board present this and allow questions that you may have on this. And as many of you know, this was launched in December, and you can also get hard copies on Amazon.com. So we're excited to share more about the best practices and also hear your feedback. Next, please.
Our global panel session, this will be the second year that we've run this session, and I'm hoping people were able to attend it last year and kind of have a rough idea of what to expect. But effectively, it's an interactive session that features international speakers from various international networks. And the idea is to bring these networks together to look at the emerging challenges and some of the local solutions that these groups have come up with, and ways in which we might be able to collaborate in a more global context, to share ideas, to share solutions to challenges, and to operate in a global framework. And this has representatives from BBIF, from ABA, from Cyber, and I believe there are quite a number of other networks who are still in the works and still signing up to this. But it was a really engaging and thought-provoking session last year that also included a panel discussion with questions from the floor. So again, it's about breaking down barriers and trying to get us working in a more global community and a global framework, which, with the way technology is going, I think is a priority for all of us. Next slide, please.
Yeah, that is great, because in essence, we are a global community, and learning how to work better, going from data, and having interoperability to on the human side, how we could connect better and share resources. It's really in of itself, it's a reason to attend this meeting. But this is a fan favorite. Speed networking is the opportunity to mix and mingle with other delegates. So if you're new to ISBER or Biobanking, this is a can't miss event, an opportunity to network and meet others within our society. So bring your business cards, bring your elevator pitches. You'll be rotating into different groups on a set time, and this is all in a friendly, gauged environment, and it will be hosted by our own Dad Catchpool. So I have been at these in past, and it's a great way to meet people, and a great opportunity to start off the meeting, making new friends, making new collaborations, which again is what ISBER is about: connecting, collaborating, and sharing. Next, please.
And I can't echo that enough. As somebody who was new to ISBER not that long ago and attended a meeting knowing absolutely no one, the speed networking is a great way to kick things off and to find your feet. Speaking of finding your feet, running is not my thing, but I am signed up for this. So all these very fit looking creatures, I'd be the koala falling flat on its face somewhere in the background there. But the fun run, again, is another really wonderful and informal way to get to know people and to network, and just to get out and see a little bit of Melbourne. So it's 5 kilometers, it is manageable. And I have to emphasize, it is a fun run, but not everybody is running. I was dragged along last year and we were definitely walking. It's along the river, so there's some stunning scenery. It is early in the morning, so you get to see Melbourne waking up. You can smell the coffee, hear the birds song. It's a really wonderful way to center yourself before the day, to wake up, a great cure to jet lag, but also it's a fundraiser for the ISBER Scholarship for lower middle income countries. So it's also for a good cause. So it's a win-win in every way. And I hope to see you all there bright and early as I am dragging my feet and trying to wake up mid-exercise. Next slide, please. We also have a number of site visits this year, and these are to 3 of the premier institutions in Melbourne. So we have the Murdoch Children's Research Institute, Biobanking Victoria's Precision Medicine Services, and also the Peter MacCallum or Peter Mac Cancer Centre. These 3 sessions do have limited numbers. So if you are interested, I encourage you to register and sign up as soon as possible, because we would hate to see people miss out. Roughly each site visit will go for around an hour to 45 minutes. They are concurrent, so you do have to choose. You aren't able to visit all 3, but you'll be broken into smaller groups and taken through in guided tours for ease of navigation and to make sure we don't lose anybody. There is transportation included, and there will be a bus that's departing from the conference venue. So again, all of that is sorted. We are reminded to wear closed-in shoes for each of these, as they are working laboratories and you are being taken right into the heart of a lot of these networks, but they're amazing opportunities. They're great institutions run by very warm and welcoming and knowledgeable people. So I encourage you, if you're interested, please sign up for the site visits. It's a great opportunity. Next slide, please. So this sort of brings us towards the end of the presentation. So just some of our take-home messages, and we say this in a bit of jest, but we also mean it genuinely. This conference is an amazing opportunity to experience a unique country and unique culture and some really exciting and unique networking opportunities. We will do our best to ensure that you can have exposure to Vegemite, if that is on your list of to-dos while you're in Australia. We hope that you get a chance to see some of the country, and also, I reiterate, the spiders are not that big. I promise
Yeah,
you.
they are poisonous, but
but you rarely see them. So I assure you, as an arachnophobe, I have continued to survive in the country. You don't need to be too concerned that you're put in peril or in danger, but we really can't stress. This is a wonderful meeting. We are really excited about the program. I think that's the most used word of today, but we mean it with all sincerity. It's not an opportunity that you want to miss. Next slide, please.
yeah.
And Greg, feel free to jump in here if you're.
Yeah, so the importance of this webinar is also that the early bird registration ends on the 19th. So to take advantage of that price reduction, make sure you register as soon as possible, and be able to come. So there are visa requirements. You have to check your country, but for most countries, it's rather easy. And for myself in the United States, it was all app based, and so took me maybe about 10 minutes, and I got a response within about 10 minutes from there. So yeah, Cass, you want to tell them more about what they need to do?
Yeah, so I guess the next steps from here, as Greg has said, check your visa requirements, but please try and register as soon as possible. You don't want to miss out on the early bird rate. It does give you an amazing discount. From there, I guess the hotel is the priority, and there is a link on the ISBER website. There are a number of hotels around the area, but of course we do have the ISBER hotel, and they've secured a great rate for access to the ISBER hotel. So we would encourage you to jump in quickly there and to register as soon as possible. If you're not able to attend in person, we do have the virtual meeting, but I guess the downside to the virtual meeting is that you won't necessarily have the same networking opportunities. And we really encourage you, if at all possible, to attend in person to do that. I guess just going a little off topic, Melbourne can be 4 seasons in a day. So you're attending in autumn, but prepare for anything in terms of weather. We were just discussing prior to the webinar, we're not necessarily a tipping culture. So that can be quite refreshing for some of our American colleagues, that you don't necessarily have to factor that into things. But there is a plethora of information on the ISBER website, including guides to Melbourne and to some of the eateries and some of the cultural hotspots, but also some really practical, useful and helpful information in terms of visas, accommodation, flights, all of that kind of thing. So we would encourage you to use the ISBER website as a source of information, but also to reach out to us and to ISBER head office for any questions. We are excited. We want you to be excited, and we are here to support and assist in any way that we can to make sure that this meeting is an utmost success and that you have the best possible experience that you can have. I don't think, is there anything there, Greg, that we need to add? I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
Do we have it? Do you want to advance the slide?
Yeah,
Oh, that's the most important thing. So this is a baby platypus, also known as a puggle. So, I think, Cass, you as an Australian did your country and the culture justice in that this is a unique opportunity. I've never had the opportunity to go to Australia. It's a unique opportunity to form those connections And none of us can do biobanking alone, and more we are dependent on our global connections. So as Cass said, you will miss out on the opportunity to make connections and network and form these lifelong partnerships and friendships. So yeah, please go to the website, connect with us. As Cass said, we are looking forward to meeting you all in person there. And please just if you're if you're resident, call us, email us, but get on the plane.
And I think that takes us to any questions. I can see there's
Yeah.
a few popping up in the chat.
Great.
Yes, recording will be made available online. And yes, Dan, as someone who doesn't necessarily favor athleticism, fun run can be an oxymoron, but I did have fun last year, even as a non. So I do encourage you to get involved.
Well, thank you so much, Cassandra and Gregory. That you had me at Puggle, I must say. But I mean, that definitely has to get the juices flowing for in anticipation for this meeting. Spectacular information, and yeah, it's gonna be a great experience for sure. But that concludes obviously the presentations segment of the webinar, and we can begin our question and answer session. Just as a reminder, you can post written questions using the Q&A box located in your Zoom panel, or raise your hand to ask your question verbally. And so I guess just to sort of encapsulate this, I'll ask the first question. Like, again, can you capture what makes this conference different than other past meetings? What makes this meeting different than the past meetings?
Well, and certainly Cass could speak to this, but I think the location makes it different right off the bat. It's unique, and yeah, and between the wildlife, the culture, and this part of the world, it makes it unique. But the contents of the meeting, I think there's a much more consolidated theme that we have this year. Our task forces have done an amazing job there. We're gonna, have some new focuses. We have the new ISBER best practices, the 5th edition. We've kind of elevated the rising stars to a symposium. I think we've expanded on the networking activities, which our membership really enjoys. And then we have some new formats that we are playing around with. And so we have some surprises for you there. Cass, how would you answer that?
Yeah, I think just to echo what you've said before, I mean, we have the most amazing task forces that we're working with. And something we discussed really early on was that we didn't necessarily want this to be cookie cutter. We wanted to break the mold a little bit and do something different. And, there are conversations that you can't not have at a meeting like this. There are topics that need to be addressed because they're emerging priorities, and they are consistent priorities in biospecimen science and biobanking. But what we've tried to do is find unique ways to look at these and new frameworks to assess them. So we're still having those important conversations that newer biobankers need to be exposed to. But I guess for some of us who have been around for a little while, we're trying to find new lenses and new ways to break down those silos and have those same essential, important conversations, but perhaps with a different perspective or through a different lens. So I think you will experience everything that you have encountered at a past ABNA meeting, but hopefully the way that we look at things will shift ever so slightly, and that you'll come away from that with a richer understanding of the diversity and the breadth of biobanking and of the skills of colleagues who have a slightly different wheelhouse to you.
Well
Yeah,
said.
I love the way you mentioned that those symposiums all flow together, and so why is it important to take a One Health approach to biobanking, understand the relationships between the medical sector, the technology, the human, the social behaviors, and the natural environment.
I think a little thing called COVID probably made that clear for a lot of us, that if we work in silos and we don't take a One Health approach, then, unfortunately everybody suffers. And that's, biobanking doesn't happen in isolation. It happens as part of a thriving scientific and research network. And that network encompasses all elements of health and well-being. So I think that's, as you say, this is a very cohesive meeting in that we wanted it to tell a story. And that in part comes back to, where our theme comes from, being grounded in Indigenous culture and storytelling and trying to learn through stories. So consider this scientific storytelling, in that we are bringing each person in to tell their story, to share their experience about how we collectively as an industry and a discipline can work towards improving research and science and medicine as a whole. Greg, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, that well said once again. And we've in building this meeting, we've had our co-chairs meet with the speakers so they could really understand what each is speaking to, understand the theme and the flow of those talks. So I think when you said, it's storytelling, but in a strong scientific format, I think that's the winning combo. And really today, biobanking is it must be seen as a part of the core infrastructure of medical research and of environmental science. We're leading the way in many ways, and we need to show that to one another. And we need to, as our meeting theme is, we need to learn how to break down barriers and build new connections with each other. And that's what this meeting will really offer.
Excellent. Well, one final question. Can you just once again capture for us the opportunities that are available for networking and learning about new biobanking models, technologies, and tools?
I think the biggest opportunity will be the person standing next to you. And we really encourage you to speak to the people that you're encountering. Go out and make a new friend. That's how we learn. And we do learn through human interaction. But I mean, Greg covered a huge number of the networking opportunities that are in here. And Greg, you might like to speak to that again, or?
Yeah, I just to further reiterate, that's kind of interwoven into the entire meeting. We've even considered that with breaks, that we could have networking opportunities. Cass, as you said, it's going to be the person next to you. But, if you come to our speed networking event, we're going to put those people in front of you. So it's going to be, if you haven't been to an ISBER meeting, it's friendly, it's cordial, people are collegiate in their nature. This is a sharing opportunity. And so it's all throughout, and from the rising stars where you could learn about people and then sit down with them at a round table. These things all interconnect as we do. So I'm excited myself to meet all my friends and make new ones.
Excellent. We got a shout out from Maria Teresa from Buenos Aires, Argentina. Says, excellent program. Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you.
I don't see any other questions. I do want to thank Cassandra and Gregory for this presentation, and thank all of you, of course, for watching today. We hope you've enjoyed this session and it gets you really excited about what Australia has to offer in terms of the ISBER annual meeting. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to info@isber.org, and we'll definitely forward your questions to the presenters. But at this time, we'd like to invite you to the ISBER 2024 annual meeting. It's a hybrid meeting, of course, with the in-person and also the virtual taking place. The in-person is, of course, April 9th to 12th in Melbourne, and the virtual takes place May 28th and 29th. The early bird rate ends on February 19th. Don't miss out on that discounted rate. And again, for more information, you can visit the ISBER website. There is one more question that popped up here. Are there any mining industry focused biobank involved with ISBER?
I can actually speak to that quickly, just off the top of my head. There are a couple. The first one that comes to mind is in our Symposium 1. So one of our speakers works quite closely with the mining industry in terms of rehabilitating mined land and using seed banks and other biological banks to rehabilitate land and reintroduce species back in. So there's definitely an environmental perspective on mining. I think I'd have to have a closer look at some of the other chats, but there is at least one presentation that, yes, we'll talk about interactions with the mining industry. And I believe he's also going to speak to the nature of their stakeholder relationship with the mining industry in terms of co-funding and how that interaction has been used not just to rehabilitate the land, but also to integrate the industry's relationship with the wider community. So yes, is the short answer.
Thank you so much for that, Cassandra. All right. Well, thanks again, Cassandra and Gregory. Excellent job. And we look forward to everybody joining us in Australia.
We
Thank
do.
you. This concludes the
Thank you,
webinar.
everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.